kids of the kingdom, welcome back. I'm so glad you could join me today because you belong here. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today, and we're going to start off with a craft, and I'm really excited to show it to you. We're going to be making some simple but beautiful, colorful hearts. And all you need are a heart stencil, a marker for tracing, some glue, and some colorful paper. Now, I like to keep my colorful paper in my very special folder. That way it'll be protected and nothing will happen to it. So let's get started. First, you take your paper. Oh my gosh! Somebody took my colorful paper and ripped it into a million pieces. Who would do something so mean? I bet it was my sister. This looks exactly like something she would do. And you know what? I'm going to get her back. You see, she has this red mug that she loves to drink her morning coffee from. Well, I'm going to get it and I'm going to break it. Because if I can't have my paper, she can't have her coffee. Anyway, today's lesson is all about forgiveness. Have you ever been treated badly by somebody? Maybe your little brother broke your favorite toy, or maybe your mom yelled at you, or maybe you told your best friend a super top secret and told her not to tell anybody, but she blabbed anyway. When people do us wrong, we feel hurt and angry, and we want them to feel the same way, so we might try to come up with a perfect plan to get them back. But God doesn't want us to do that. Sometimes, even if we decide not to seek revenge on somebody who wrongs us, we might stop speaking to them or find little ways to be petty towards them. And that's called holding a grudge. And God doesn't want us to do that either. So, how does God want us to handle people who treat us badly? Well, He wants us to forgive them. Okay, first things first. Let's go over the meaning of the word forgive. According to Merriam-Webster's Children's Dictionary, the definition of forgive means to stop feeling anger towards someone who has done something wrong. Have you ever heard of the Bible story about a guy named Joseph? Not Mary's husband, Joseph. This Joseph was a teenager whose story can be found in the Old Testament. Most of the time when we hear about Joseph, we talk about his coat of many colors or the dreams that he had. But I also like to think of Joseph the dreamer as Joseph the forgiver. Let me give you a little background in case you've never heard the story of Joseph before. Joseph was a boy with a bunch of big brothers. See, Joseph was the baby of the family, and he was also his father's favorite. And that made Joseph's brothers very angry. So angry that they beat him up, stole his clothes, and dumped him in a hole. Then, as if that wasn't enough, they sold him into slavery. Young Joseph was forced to grow up very fast, as he was forced to work in a strange new land. His story is an interesting one, full of twists and turns that include Joseph being accused of something he didn't do and being thrown in prison for it. But it all worked out because Joseph became one of the top leaders in Egypt. And years later, when he was all grown up, he found himself face to face with his brothers. They were down and out and needed help. It was a matter of life or death, and Joseph was the only person who could save them. Now, this would have been the perfect opportunity for Joseph to hold a grudge. He could have just ignored his brothers' pleas for help and let them all die. He could have had them locked up and let them rot in prison. But Joseph didn't do that. Instead, he decided to forgive them. He chose to put his anger aside and help his brothers. He gave them all food, money, land, new cars, new homes. Okay, maybe not new cars, but only because cars hadn't been invented yet. So he gave them new donkeys instead. They were able to live happy and comfortable lives thanks to the little brother they treated so badly. That's usually when we stop talking about Joseph, but Genesis chapter 50, verses 15 through 21 tell us that Joseph was really serious about this forgiveness thing. So fast forward several years. After spending years away from home, thanks to the horrible thing his brothers had done to him, Joseph was reunited with his father. The family lived happily for several years, but eventually Joseph's father grew old and died. After the funeral, Joseph's brothers became very worried. See, they thought that Joseph had been nice to them for all those years because of their father. Have you ever done something because your parents weren't there to stop you, so you thought you could get away with it? Well, Joseph's brothers had beaten him up and shipped him off to a foreign country when their dad wasn't around. And even though he'd been kind to them so far, they thought he was about to return the favor for sure. So they just kind of gave up, threw themselves down on the ground and said, "We'll be your slaves now." Now Joseph could have just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Okay, get to work, slaves. Dad can't save you now." After all, he had a very important position in leadership. But Joseph did not abuse his power. Instead, he was humble and continued to be kind and generous towards his brothers. He could have just ignored them and let them worry about their fate, but he chose to reassure them, remind them that they were forgiven. And that's what God wants us to do. It's so hard to be kind to people who have done you dirty or done you wrong, but I think we could all learn a very important lesson from Joseph, the forgiver. Well, after hearing Joseph's story of forgiveness, I've given it some thought and I've decided that I'm not going to get my sister back. I'm not going to seek revenge. Instead, I'm going to be like Joseph and I'm going to forgive her. I'm still a little disappointed about my craft because I really wanted to make big colorful hearts. But instead I was able to take the little pieces and use them to make one big heart. And that's kind of how forgiveness works. See, when somebody hurts us or they do something wrong to us, it can hurt our feelings and make us feel angry. It might even make us feel like our heart is broken, torn into a million little pieces like this paper. But the thing about forgiveness is it releases us from that. And forgiveness can be the glue that holds all these little tiny pieces together. Now, it won't be the way that it was before, but it will still be beautiful. And that's the beauty of forgiveness.